She climbed over my fence, declared herself the HOA patrol, and tried to have me arrested for growing tomatoes. What started as a petty feud spiraled into lawsuits, viral videos, and a complete collapse of her power. But trust me, you won't believe how far she went before it all came crashing down. When I bought the land, I wasn't just buying property. I was buying peace. A sprawling 5-acre lot nestled between a distant mountain ridge and a sleepy gravel road. No gates. No neighbors peeking through blinds. Just sky, soil, and the promise of something purer. I'd spent years in the city, traffic, deadlines, HOA meetings about the color of my mailbox. This land was my rebellion, my sanctuary. I quit my job in IT, sold my townhouse, and moved here with nothing but a rusted trailer, a second-hand toolbox, and a vision, a small, self-sufficient homestead where I could grow my own food, raise a few animals, and breathe again. The land was raw, but beautiful. Patches of wildflowers danced in the breeze, and ancient oaks stood like silent guardians. It was untouched, unbothered, and more than anything, I want to keep it that way. My first few weeks were a mix of hard labor and bliss. Every sunrise began with the crow of a new morning, and every sunset closed with dirt under my nails and satisfaction in my bones. I built raised garden beds along the eastern fence and planted tomatoes, squash, and peppers. Chickens came next, just 6 of them, all rescued, clucking with gratitude as they pecked their way across the fresh soil. A greenhouse followed, built from reclaimed windows and wooden beams I'd salvaged. It stood proudly behind the coop like a glass temple of life. I rigged up a rainwater collection system, composted kitchen scraps, and even started experimenting with solar panels for electricity. Every inch of this land began to hum with purpose. I wasn't just growing vegetables. I was growing freedom. And for a while, it was exactly what I dreamed, until she moved in. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the white SUV appeared, glossy, new, and out of place, like a luxury handbag in a barn. I was planting basil near the coop when the vehicle slowly rolled past my property, hesitated, then pulled into gravel driveway next door, the old Johnson place. I watched as a woman in her mid-50s stepped out, dressed in pristine white slacks and a flowing blouse, the kind you'd expect at a country club, not a country road. Her blonde bob barely moved in the wind. She stood stiff, surveying the area like a general assessing enemy territory. I gave a neighborly wave. She didn't wave back. The next morning, I saw her again. This time she was standing just beyond her property line, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, watching me shovel compost. "Are those animals over there?" she asked, voice clipped. "Chickens," I replied, cheerful. "6 hens. Real quiet, promise." She didn't smile. "I hope you have permits." "Don't need 'em out here. Zoning's age residential. No HOA, no city limits." Her lips tightened. "Well, I suppose we'll see." And with that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the gravel like a metronome counting down to something unpleasant. 3 days later, I found a note tucked under a rock at the edge of my property. Handwritten in flawless cursive, on scented paper, no less. "Dear neighbor, I've noticed a structure near our shared boundary. It appears to be a chicken coop, though it lacks any aesthetic or safety design appropriate for the area. It is, frankly, an eyesore. Please consider relocating it to a less visible location, away from my windows. Regards, Karen L. Prescott." I laughed at first. Who even writes Senate complaint letters? But then I noticed her patio furniture, positioned precisely to face my coop, and binoculars. I'm not joking. Binoculars on the table next to her lemonade. Still trying to be civil, I knocked on her door that evening with a smile and a plate of farm-fresh eggs. She opened the door barely an inch. "Yes." "I got your note," I said. "Thought I'd share some eggs. The girls are laying like champs." She didn't touch the plate. "I don't eat eggs from unregulated sources." "Right," I said, the smile fading. "Well, just wanted to say the coop's up to code, and I'm within my rights." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Maybe, but just because something's legal doesn't make it right." And with that, she shut the door in my face. The next issue came a week later. This time, it was the compost bins. I'd built them from old pallets, positioned neatly near the greenhouse. They didn't smell. They were covered, and they worked like a charm, turning scraps into black gold. But one morning, I woke to shouting. Karen was at the edge of my property, phone in hand, waving it like a weapon. "Biohazard," she yelled. "You're breeding pests. I'm calling environmental services." I walked up calmly. "It's compost. All natural. Legal. Contained." "You think you're above the law?" she snapped. "This isn't some backwoods dump site." I held my ground. "This is rural farmland. Composting is encouraged here." She pointed her phone at me like a badge. "I'm documenting this. This is a threat to public health." And just like that, she stormed off, snapping pictures along the way. That night, I installed motion-activated lights and added a new camera facing the compost area. This wasn't just passive-aggressive behavior anymore. It was becoming something else, something dangerous, something obsessive. I thought after the composting incident she might back off, maybe even retreat behind her lemon-scented letters and patio furniture. But I underestimated Karen's persistence and her imagination. 3 days later, another note appeared. This one wasn't scented. It was typed, neatly formatted with bullet points, bold headers, and a makeshift letterhead that read, "Neighborhood Preservation Advisory." The letter outlined a list of guidelines I was apparently in violation of, including Section 1A, no structures within 50 feet of boundary lines. Section 2B, no livestock without neighbor consent. Section 3C, composting must occur in sealed containers with pest control certification. At the bottom, in bold, it said, "Failure to comply will result in formal community enforcement." I scanned every line and blinked in disbelief. There was no HOA here, no neighborhood council, no enforcement agency, just property owners. Independent, self-governing, and protected by county law. I wasn't dealing with a difficult neighbor. I was dealing with someone who had created an entire fictional bureaucracy in her head and was now trying to enforce it. That night, I laughed a little. But in the morning, I noticed a small wooden stake planted along our shared fence line, with a laminated printout of her guidelines stapled to it. And that wasn't funny. Fed up, I walked over and knocked on her door. This time I wasn't holding eggs. I was holding a copy of the county property records and a zoning map. She opened the door, arms folded. "Yes." I handed her the documents. "Karen, there is no HOA here, no advisory board, no architectural review committee. We're in unincorporated territory. You can't make rules for land you don't own." She looked at the papers with disdain, then back at me. "Those documents are outdated." "No, they're not. Printed yesterday from a county website." She didn't flinch. Some of us care about maintaining standards. Just because you found a loophole doesn't make your chicken shanty appropriate. "Karen," I said slowly, "you don't get to invent rules and enforce them. That's not how law works." Her eyes hardened. "Then perhaps we need to go above the county." I blinked. "What does that mean?" But she shut the door without answering. When I got home, I found a printed flyer taped in my mailbox. "Attention neighbors. Preserve our community standards. Report code violations. Protect our property values." Then in smaller text, call Karen P., preservation lead. She had self-appointed herself sheriff of the countryside, and she was just getting started. From that point forward, Karen made her presence a daily ritual. Every morning around 7:15, she would step out in a tracksuit, armed with a clipboard and a pair of binoculars, and begin her inspection walk along the boundary fence. She didn't just glance over. She paused, studied, took notes. If a chicken wandered too close to the fence, she'd scribble furiously. If I was working in the garden, she'd stand like a statue, silently observing, until I acknowledged her. Once I waved. She raised her phone and took a picture. I built a taller privacy barrier using reclaimed wood and fast-growing bamboo plants. The next morning, she stood just beyond the fence, arms crossed, watching me like a hawk behind mirrored sunglasses. And then she escalated further. One evening, I spotted her walking deeper into the tree line at the rear of the property. My property. She had a measuring tape. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and called out, "Karen, you're on my land." She turned around calmly, not startled at all. "I'm conducting a boundary verification. I have a right to check for encroachments." "No, you don't. Not without a surveyor's license. And not on my land." She shrugged. "I'll let the county sort it out." That night, I placed new private property, no trespassing signs along every entrance point. I also bought more cameras. I was fixing a leaky greenhouse pipe when the motion alert on my phone buzzed. At first, I assumed it was a raccoon or one of the chickens pecking near the compost, but when I opened the live feed, I froze. There she was, Karen, on my property, walking slowly around the tool shed with phone in one hand and what looked like a flashlight in the other. She examined the structure, peeked through the slats, even tried the door handle. I burst out the front door and approached quickly, but calmly. "Karen," I called, "you're trespassing." She didn't even flinch. "I have reason to believe you're storing prohibited chemicals." "What?" She turned, cool as ever. "There's a strong ammonia odor coming from this shed. It could be a violation of the Clean Air Act." "It's a fertilizer mix," I said, "and you don't have a right to inspect anything here. Get off my land." She took one more photo and walked away slowly, muttering, "This will be part of my report." By the time I reached the door, she was back behind her fence, already uploading photos on what looked like a local Facebook group for the area. She captioned one of the images, "Hazardous storage near family properties. This is why zoning laws matter." That post got 4 likes. One comment said, "Don't worry, Karen. Keep us safe." That night, I started documenting everything. Every photo she took. Every time she crossed the line. Because something told me she wasn't going to stop until she either got her way or got sued. It was around sunset the next day when I caught her again, this time kneeling near one of my raised beds, inspecting a tomato plant as if it were evidence in a crime scene. I approached fast. "Karen." She didn't look up. "Karen," I repeated louder. "Step away. You're trespassing again." She stood slowly, brushing invisible dust from her sleeves. "Your plant boxes may be leaching into the ground. I'm collecting samples for water contamination testing." My patience snapped. I pulled out my phone, recording. "You've been warned. This is private property. You're trespassing. I'm documenting this and filing a police report." She raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead, but I'll be submitting my own findings to the Environmental Health Division." I took a step closer. "You need to leave. Now. And don't come back. The next time you cross that fence, you're getting charged." For a moment, she just stood there, silent, calculating. Then she gave me a tiny smile. Good fences make good neighbors. But some neighbors still need supervision. She turned and walked back toward her house. And that sentence? It stuck in my mind long after she disappeared from sight. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor anymore. She was someone who believed she had power and wasn't afraid to use it, even if it was entirely imagined. 2 days after the raised bed incident, I was tightening the frame of the chicken run when I saw them. 2 sheriff's deputies pulling into my driveway, their patrol car kicking up dust. My heart jumped. I wiped the sweat from my brow and approached calmly. "Officers," I said, puzzled. "Everything all right?" One of them, Officer Ramirez, nodded politely. "We received a call about illegal farming activity, hazardous compost, potential animal neglect, and suspected code violations." My blood ran cold for a second. I knew exactly who had made that call. I led them around the property, explaining everything. I showed them the compost, regulated, turned, balanced with green and brown matter. The chickens, plump, healthy, with access to food, water, and a shaded coop. My shed, locked and stocked only with basic tools and organic fertilizers. After 20 minutes, Officer Ramirez gave me a tired smile. "Everything checks out. Honestly, we see this kind of thing a lot. Neighbor disputes. One person thinks the other's ruining the aesthetic, so they call us. Usually it's over a lawn." I laughed a little bitterly. "She's making things up." His partner nodded. "We'll write a report. But unless she can prove an ordinance violation, she's just wasting our time." As they were leaving, Officer Ramirez turned and said quietly, "We noticed her peeking from a fence." She waved when we pulled in. That night, I saw a post on her page. "Authorities now investigating. Stay tuned. Hashtag clean up our block." I didn't respond, but I did print out a copy of the sheriff's incident report the next day and slid it into a labeled folder titled Karen Evidence Legal. By the weekend, I had double my surveillance. 2 new motion trigger cameras went up by the shed and coop. A third covered the tree lean, where she had once walked in, with her measuring tape. I also bought motion sensor floodlights. Subtle but effective. The first night after I installed them, a soft chime pinged on my phone around 10:47 p.m. The camera feed lit up, and there she was, not even trying to hide. Karen was in a bathrobe, flashlight in hand, walking slowly along the fence line with a measuring stick. She paused at the compost bin, shone her light directly into it, then scribbled on her ever-present clipboard. The moment she crossed the boundary line, barely, but definitively, I snapped a screenshot time-stamped. The next morning, I called the sheriff's office. Not to report her just yet, but to file a trespass warning. "This is the 3rd time," I explained. "I have video proof." The clerk said someone would come by for a statement. But before that could happen, Karen escalated again, publicly. That afternoon, I noticed her hammering something near the front edge of her property. By the time I came out to get the mail, it was up. A 4-foot wooden sign, hand-painted in bold red letters. "Illegal farm next door. Stay away. Pest-ridden. Unlicensed. Report to county." Underneath, she had stapled several flyers, copies of her made-up community guidelines, with my address handwritten at the top. I stood across the fence, mouth agape. "You've got to be kidding me." She turned and smirked. "Free speech. I'm allowed to inform the public. That's slander." She shrugged. "Then sue me." The following hours were chaos. My mailman paused to read the sign. A UPS driver gave me a strange look. Even a few joggers slowed down to snap a photo. I took my own photos for documentation and contacted a lawyer. Technically, he said, she's dancing on the edge, but if she's naming you directly and making false claims, that could be defamation. He gave me a few tips, and we drafted a cease and desist letter, but he advised against delivering it in person. "Someone like her," he said, "she'll twist it into an assault accusation." I didn't need that, so instead, I prepared for something else. The next morning, I stepped out with a watering can and stretched out my sore shoulders from yesterday's chaos. That's when I noticed it. Karen, sitting in a lawn chair by the fence, phone mounted on a tripod, filming me. She had a sun hat on, a bottle of mineral water beside her, and a notepad on her lap. Every time I moved, her camera followed. Every chicken peck, every tomato I touched, every movement in the soil. I waved sarcastically. "Getting good footage?" She didn't answer. That evening, I scrolled through the community Facebook group. Sure enough, new posts from Karen appeared. "Today's activity: unpermitted irrigation. Excess water flow may attract mosquitoes. Filming for evidence. Hashtag concerned neighbor. Hashtag do your part." Some commenters laughed. Others asked questions. A few cheered her on. But one neighbor commented, "Karen, you're literally harassing them. Let them farm." That comment got 15 likes. Her post, only 4. It was the first crack in her control, and I was going to push that crack wide open. I met with my lawyer that Thursday, binder in hand. Inside, photos of trespassing, screenshot of her slander posts, police visit reports, and a copy of the non-existent HOA guidelines she kept referencing. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, flipped through the pages with raised eyebrows. "This is thorough." "I've had to be," I said. "She's relentless." He nodded. "We'll start with a cease and desist. Demand removal of the sign and the online posts, cessation of harassment, and a formal notice not to step foot on your land." What if she ignores it? He closed the binder. Then we moved to a restraining order and a defamation suit. You got a strong case, but I want to give her one last chance to stop. We mailed the letter certified. I watched from my window as she received it the next day. She didn't even open it right away. She stood on her porch, glaring at the envelope, then slowly turned her eyes toward my property like she knew it was from me. The next morning, the sign was gone. So was the tripod. But I wasn't celebrating yet, because I knew her silence wasn't surrender. It was a calm before her biggest storm. 3 days of eerie silence passed after Karen removed the sign. I kept my cameras rolling, but she hadn't stepped foot on her lawn, or mine. Then, on a drizzly Tuesday morning, a white sedan rolled up the gravel driveway. 2 people in county jackets stepped out, one carrying a clipboard, the other a digital camera. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to remain polite. "County Code Enforcement," the taller one said. "We received a formal complaint alleging unpermitted structures, improper livestock management, and environmental hazards." It hit me like a brick to the chest. This was Karen's next move. She had escalated to official agencies. I swallowed my frustration and led them around the property. Again, they took photos of the coop, compost bins, water barrels, and garden beds. They measured setbacks and took notes on everything. After nearly an hour, one of them looked up from his clipboard. "To be honest," he said, "you're operating well within the city's small-scale agriculture code. As long as your livestock isn't exceeding the limit and structures are under height restrictions, which they are, you're compliant." I nodded. "Someone filed this out of spite. She's been harassing me for months." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not the first to say that." "Really?" I asked. He nodded. "We've received other complaints from this address. Most don't pan out, but by law we have to follow up." When they left, I exhaled in relief. But it was short-lived, because that evening, Karen struck again, this time publicly and maliciously. Around 7 a.m. the next day, I opened my mailbox and froze. Inside were 5 flyers, folded and damp, each printed with a headline: "Warning! Toxic farm next door." Below was a grainy photo of my compost bin, heavily saturated and edited to look darker and more disgusting than reality. Beneath that, in bold red font, "Hazardous substances detected. Protect your children. Protect your pets. Say no to backyard biohazards." The most terrifying part? My address was listed at the bottom. Within hours, a neighbor sent me a text. "Hey, just found this in my mailbox. You okay?" That same morning, I walked around the block. She had stuffed these flyers in every mailbox within a 4-house radius. On some driveways, she left them under rocks. I collected as many as I could, but the damage was done. That afternoon, I walked into my garage and found a bag of dog feces tossed against the wall. No note, no signature, but I knew who had stirred the neighborhood's anger. And I knew I had to strike back, not with retaliation, but with proof. By that Friday, I had a plan. I created a Facebook event titled, "See for Yourself. Open Garden Tour this Sunday. Transparency over Toxic Lies." I posted cheerful photos of the garden, my coop, and myself smiling with a thumbs up. Then I wrote, "False claims have been circulating about this property. Let's clear the air. Come tour the space, meet the animals, and see exactly how clean, safe, and lawful our operation really is." To my surprise, 12 neighbors RSVP'd. Karen tried to comment, writing, "Don't be fooled. The real danger is invisible." But one neighbor replied, "Then you should come and prove it." Sunday morning came. I baked muffins. I set out lemonade. I cleaned every inch of the garden, fluffed the coop straw, and even made little signs for each crop. By 10 a.m., neighbors trickled in, curious, cautious, but friendly. They asked smart questions. They petted the chickens. One family brought their kid, who adored the goats. Even Mr. Alton, the quiet war vet 2 doors down, gave me a hearty nod. "You're doing good work here," he said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Karen didn't show, but she saw. Because by 11:15, I noticed her standing by her window, phone in hand, filming. 3 days after the tour, I got a knock at the door. 2 officers. Again, "Sir, are you aware of an incident reported by your neighbor involving verbal threats and aggressive behavior?" I blinked. "Come again." Officer Ramirez, same one from last time, sighed. Your neighbor claims that you confronted her while holding a pitchfork, made threatening remarks, and brandished the tool in an aggressive manner. I stood there stunned. That never happened. She says it happened 2 nights ago, around 8 p.m. I pulled out my phone and opened the footage from that time. Security cam number 4, facing the fence. I showed the clip. Me watering. Chickens pecking. No tools. No shouting. No confrontation. Ramirez took the phone, watched it again, and sighed. Look, he said, this is the 3rd call she's made about you in less than a month. But this is the first one that could have been a criminal matter. I shook my head. She's trying to build a case. Frame me. I've got footage, flyers, witnesses from the tour, whatever you need. He nodded. Good. Keep everything. Because at this point, we're documenting this pattern. And it's starting to look like harassment. They left. I sat on my porch for a long time after. My pitchfork was still leaning in the shed, untouched for weeks. I wondered, how far is she willing to go? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, I woke up to 37 notifications on my phone. A local community group, one with over 15,000 members, had a viral post titled, Shocking Conditions at Backyard Farm, Alarming Neighbors, Photos Inside. It had over 500 shares. Photos of my compost pile. A zoomed-in shot of a wet patch on the lawn. A blurry chicken looking mid-squawk. And worst of all, a caption claiming, Children coughing. Dog sick. Smells unbearable. Why is the city ignoring this? Scrolling to the bottom, I found the poster Amanda L. listed as Concerned Community Advocate. I dug deeper. Amanda L. was Karen's cousin. Same last name. Same address from an old fundraising post. I took screenshots, time-stamped everything, and forwarded it to my lawyer. An hour later, a neighbor I barely knew messaged me. Hey, just saw the post. I'm so sorry. Is this all Karen's doing? I didn't even have to answer, because by that evening, Amanda had removed the post, quietly without a word, but the damage was spreading. I wasn't just in a neighborly feud anymore. I was fighting a full-blown disinformation campaign. And my farm, my peace, my reputation, they were all in the crosshairs. The community HOA meeting that month was already expected to be tense. Issues over budget cuts and parking rules had neighbors grumbling, but no one expected fireworks. Least of all me. I hadn't planned to attend. Not until I learned the agenda had been amended to include neighbor complaints regarding private agricultural activity. I knew it was Karen, and I knew I couldn't let her control the narrative. So I arrived 15 minutes early, flash drive in hand, documents in a folder, and a calm fire in my chest. By the time the room filled, Karen was already seated in the front row, flanked by her cousin Amanda and 2 others I recognized from her Facebook posse. The HOA president, a soft-spoken man named Mr. Delgado, opened the floor after the standard motions. Karen shot to her feet. We can't sit quietly anymore, she snapped. This individual, she pointed, is operating a dangerous, disease-ridden farm that violates the spirit of our neighborhood. Gasps. Whispers. Amanda nodded dramatically. He has chickens, compost bins that attract rats, and barrels of standing water. Do I need to remind you of mosquito-borne viruses? I didn't flinch. When she was done, Delgado cleared his throat. Would the accused like to respond? I stood, walked forward, and plugged in the flash drive. I came prepared, I said, and turned the projector. Slide 1. A copy of the city code, with my property circled under exemptions. Slide 2. Photos from the open farm tour. Kids smiling, neighbors laughing, pristine coop. Slide 3. Footage from my security cam, showing Karen trespassing, planting signs, and filming me without cause. Gasps turned into silence. Karen's face went pale. I clicked to the final slide, a copy of the county inspection report, signed and dated. All compliant. Delgado leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and said, "Well then." And just like that, the room shifted. The whispers now weren't about me. They were about her. After the meeting, as chairs scraped back and neighbors murmured in huddles, Delgado approached me. He shook my hand. "Impressive presentation," he said. "You came prepared. I had to, I replied. I can't keep letting her control the narrative. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. She's filed 3 unrelated complaints to the board in the last 2 months, he said. One about your garden. One about the family on Oak Drive because their kids play too loudly. And one against the Harrisons for not trimming their hedges. She's escalating, I said. Delgado nodded. And we're noticing. We've started documenting. He glanced toward Karen, who was furiously whispering with Amanda near the refreshment table. She's influential, but even her support is thinning. Tonight may have changed things. Should I be worried? I asked. He paused. I'd recommend keeping a detail log. Cameras, dates, times, witnesses when possible. Not just for you, but in case it's needed for others down the line. That night, I started a shared neighborhood journal with a few allies from the meeting. Karen didn't know it yet, but her every move was no longer happening in the shadows. Karen's campaign had shaken the block, but her plan backfired. People started messaging me privately. Hey, I'm not a fan of chickens, but you've been nothing but respectful. I think what you're doing is cool. Let me know if you need backup. So I turned that support into action. I created a petition titled, Protect Sustainable Urban Farming in Our Neighborhood. The goal, 50 signatures. In a week, I had 73. Mr. Alton was the first to sign, then the Harrisons. Even Mrs. Donnelly, who once asked me to keep my goats quiet during nap time, added her name. I attached the petition to a formal letter to the HOA, proposing that small-scale farms be recognized and supported in the community bylaws as long as they followed city code. Karen caught wind quickly and tried to start her own petition. Title, Preserve Neighborhood Standards, No Backyard Farms. It got 6 signatures. 2 of them were Amanda. Meanwhile, I made laminated versions of my city permit and placed them in my front yard on a stake, next to a sign that read, Certified, Clean, and Compliant Urban Agriculture Site. People honked in support as they drove by. Even better, someone taped a note to my gate that read, Keep growing. You're planting more than food. You're planting hope. But Karen wasn't finished. One morning, I woke to the sound of hammering. By noon, a brand-new wooden fence stood between our properties, towering solid, at least 9 feet tall. It cast a long, creeping shadow across my vegetable beds. The tomatoes, the basil, even the spinach, all shaded by rage. I knew the limit. 6 feet was a maximum under the city's residential zoning code. She knew it, too. This was a statement. I called the zoning department, filed a complaint. Within 48 hours, an inspector arrived, measured, took photos. She'll have to lower it, he said, or apply for a variance, which you won't get. Blocking your solar access is a violation. I thanked him and offered lemonade. He smiled and declined, but left with a folder of prior evidence I compiled. That evening, I stood by the fence and smiled. Karen peeked through a knothole. I held up a measuring tape and mouthed, Too tall? She didn't smile back. 3 days later, the notice was posted on her gate in bold red letters. Violation of city zoning code. Structure exceeds permitted height. Karen tore it down and stormed outside, just as I was feeding the goats. You did this, she screamed, stomping across her yard. You built the wall, I replied calmly. She lost it, screaming about slander and illegal surveillance and defamation, right there in broad daylight. Neighbors stepped out to watch. Mr. Alton folded his arms across his porch. The Harrisons peeked through their blinds. I reached into my pocket and held up my phone. It's recording, I said, so please keep going. She froze. And that's when Amanda came outside and tried to drag her back inside like a child mid-tantrum. Karen, stop. You're making it worse. Karen turned on her cousin. You're supposed to back me up. I did, Amanda said. I posted. I lied. I got doxxed. Then lie. Better. I captured it all. Within an hour, the video, captioned Karen's public fence freakout, was uploaded to a private neighborhood group. Then Reddit. Then TikTok. It went viral overnight. I didn't post it, but I didn't take it down either. The next week, I received a letter. Registered mail. From a law office I didn't recognize. Inside, a formal notice of intent to sue. Karen was accusing me of public defamation, digital harassment, and intentional emotional distress. She claimed I had orchestrated an online smear campaign that led to irreparable damage to her public standing and personal peace. It was laughable. I hadn't even posted the video. The neighborhood had. And the footage was public, filmed in broad daylight on my own property. Still, I had to take it seriously. I immediately contacted a lawyer, a calm, methodical woman named Elaine Benton, who specialized in HOA and civil disputes. After reviewing the footage and documents, Elaine chuckled softly. "This is a bluff," she said. "Classic intimidation move. She wants you to back down." "I won't," I said. "Good," Elaine replied, "because this is the kind of case judges throw out, and she'll end up on the hook for your legal fees." She filed a motion to dismiss within 48 hours and requested sanctions for frivolous litigation. Karen's own lawsuit had just become a trap for herself. The hearing took place 2 weeks later. Karen showed up in court with Amanda again, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She wore sunglasses indoors. I arrived with Elaine and a thick binder of documentation. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, didn't even let the case go past 15 minutes. After Elaine presented the timeline, the video, and noted that Karen's behavior had prompted community backlash, not my doing, the judge issued her ruling. This case is without merit. The plaintiff has demonstrated a pattern of instigating conflicts without legitimate cause. Court fines will be issued for misuse of resources. Case dismissed. Karen gasped. Amanda muttered, "Told you so." The gavel hit. I walked out with no fines, no gag orders, and a growing sense that the tide had finally turned for good. And for Karen, the consequences were just beginning, because court records are public, and the local paper picked it up within 48 hours. Headline: Neighborhood Karen loses frivolous lawsuit after viral meltdown. The viral video, the court ruling, and a rising wave of neighborhood support finally forced the HOA's hand. An emergency meeting was announced. Private, board only, no public comments allowed. But word leaked quickly. Karen's role on the Community Standards Committee was up for debate. By the end of the week, the announcement came via email. Effective immediately, Karen H. has been relieved of all committee duties and responsibilities. The HOA thanks her for her service and wishes her well. No signatures, no fanfare, just a quiet dismissal. But the neighborhood? Oh, they celebrated. People started leaving baskets of fresh produce at my gate with handwritten notes. For our real community leader, thanks for standing up. Even Mr. Alton hosted a little barbecue and toasted to the guy who kept growing while the weeds tried to take over. Karen's front yard, meanwhile, had grown silent. Her fence, now forcibly trimmed to the legal limit, stood like a half-finished monument to ego. Amanda's car hadn't been seen in days. And Karen? She'd started closing her blinds. Just when I thought the storm had passed, I got a call from the Department of Urban Sustainability. They'd heard about the ordeal, watched the video, read the articles, and they were impressed. You stayed calm, stayed compliant, and your site is a model of what we're trying to promote, the rep said. They invited me to speak at a local green spaces and growing communities event. I was nervous. I wasn't a public speaker. I was a grower, not a talker. But I agreed. I stood on stage in a local rec center, wearing a clean button-down and holding a slideshow clicker, and I told my story. The crowd, dozens of local growers, teachers, sustainability leaders, laughed, gasped, clapped. When I finished, a young man in the back raised his hand. How'd you deal with the pressure? With someone always watching you, try to make you fail? I paused. Then I said, you keep growing. Even when someone tries to stomp you out, you dig deeper roots. The applause that followed felt like a harvest. Spring came. The coop was full of healthy hens. The soil was rich, the herbs thriving, and I'd added 2 new raised beds with strawberries and carrots. A few neighbor kids helped me build a little garden sign. Hope Acres, EST, in spite of the odds. Neighbors waved when they passed by. Some stopped to chat. Others brought kitchen scraps for compost or asked advice on tomato blight. The hostility had turned to harmony. And Karen? One morning, I noticed a for sale sign in her yard. No open house. No listing online. Just a sign. Within a week, the house was empty. Amanda's car gone. Curtains drawn. She left as quietly as she had once stormed in. There was no final scream, no act of revenge. Just silence, and peace, and growth.